Week 17 of the fantasy football season. His quarterback starts at every matchup this week. Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Commanders. Dak Prescott is start, leading the league in passing yards, even though the numbers the last couple weeks have gone down for Dak Prescott. And obviously this Cowboy team, they were trying to make a late push, but the last 3 weeks, losing 3 games in a row. But this week in a good matchup on paper at the Commanders, he's a start. Marcus Mariota, there's a possibility he plays in this ball game, head coach Dan Quinn said. But even if he does, I know it's a pretty good matchup versus a bad Dallas Cowboy defense, but Mariota, he's been in and out of games all season long as well, taking big hits, taking big beatings, and also in a championship ball game, he wouldn't be a quarterback I would trust. He's a sit if he plays. And Josh Johnson, he's bounced around the league many times, obviously on 14 teams in his NFL career. Not a guy you would trust as well. He's a sit. Detroit Lions at the Minnesota Vikings. Jared Goff is start. It seems like weekly he's going out there. He's putting up huge numbers, is Jared Goff. And definitely his numbers have gone up since Dan Campbell's taken over the play calling duties over a month and a half of the season. So this week at the Minnesota Vikings, a team he's very familiar with, he's a start. Even though this Lion team's out of the playoffs, J.J. McCarthy, he's banged up with a wrist injury. He's going for an MRI. It's not looking good, but I'm just going to list him here just in case he tries to gut it out. And McCarthy, he's been pretty much an injury-prone quarterback the first 2 seasons of his NFL career, and he's definitely showed flashes, but not good enough to me for fantasy value to sit if he plays. And Max Rosmer, we saw him early in the year at the Seahawks. He took a beating in that game and turned the football over 5 times. So this week versus the Lions, he's an easy sit. Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. Bo Nix a start. It's been a solid second year for Bo Nix. Even though last week a very tough loss, no doubt about it, versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Bo Nix can run the football a little bit, getting out of that pocket, putting up a lot of deep balls. He's one of the better deep ball throwers in the league. Him and Courtland Sutton locked in, and Troy Franklin's getting things going. And this week, at a Chief team that definitely mailed it in last week, he's a start. And Chris Adokon, he's a sit down to the third-string quarterback. He's this Kansas City Chief team. And to play versus one of the better defenses in the league in the Denver Broncos, it's going to be a long day for Ogokon and this Chief offense. He's an easy sit. Houston Texans at the Los Angeles Chargers. C.J. Stroud, he's a fringe option. He hasn't been great this season, is C.J. Stroud, where this defense has put them in good position more weeks than not. And this is also an offense that stalls out a whole lot with Kaimi Fairbairn, one of the better kickers in the league, and amongst the league leaders in attempts for field goals this season. So with those factors and the Charger defense, for the most part, that's been a solid unit all season long. And best to me, Stroud's a fringe option. Justin Herbert to start. I know it's a very tough matchup, obviously, with the Houston Texans coming in, one of the better defenses in the league. But this offense is so loaded. There's so many guys on this offense that could get open and make plays. It's just not one guy you got to key in on in the passing game and stop. So with all these playmakers over there in Los Angeles, and Herbert looked more confident playing with that left hand injury, even though he's played with it now for 3 weeks, but last week more comfortable versus the Cowboys. I think this week versus the Texans, he's a decent starting option. Baltimore Ravens at the Packers. Lamar Jackson, he's a start if he plays in this game. Obviously hurt the back in last week's game, left early, they lost in a comeback victory from the New England Patriots. And Lamar, obviously, he hasn't put up the elite numbers this season, where he's been nicked up on and off all season long, but still, he's a quarterback. If you got this far with him, if he plays in this game, he's a start, unless you got a way better option. And Tyler Huntley is sit. Huntley, he's been a backup on and off for many seasons for this Baltimore Raven team. And this week to go, obviously, into Green Bay, if he has to start this game, you can't trust him versus that defense, even with Micah Parsons out of sit. Jordan Love, he's a start. Love got concussed last week. He tried to make it back in that ball game, but he couldn't. And obviously, they blew it, and the Bears came back and won in overtime versus the Packers. But Jordan Love, he was having a pretty solid season before he went out in that game last week. So if he finds a way to get back this week, is Jordan Love would be a start. But right now it's up in the air. Malik Willis, he got nicked up as well in last week's ball game. He gutted it out to the end. So if he's starting in this one, is Malik Willis, he wouldn't be a start. It's just a ball game. Obviously, if it's down to 2 backup quarterbacks playing, they're easy sits. Arizona Cardinals at the Cincinnati Bengals. Jacoby Brissett a start. Last week was one of his worst games of the year as the starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. And Trey McBride, they pretty much double-teamed him and forced Brissett to throw the football to backup tight end Elijah Higgins. And obviously Michael Wilson and Harrison was limited in that game. But this week in a good matchup and a potential high-scoring game at Cincinnati, I think Brissett bounces back. He's a start. Joe Burrow is start each and every week. I know a couple weeks ago, a horrible game it was for him versus the Baltimore Ravens. But last week he redeemed himself with a monster game, over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. So this week versus a bad Cardinal defense, he's an easy start. Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. Aaron Rodgers is start. This Brown defense the last couple weeks, they're giving up a lot of points, and Denzel Ward missed last week's game as well. We'll see if he plays in this one. And this offense of the Browns puts their defense in bad positions as well. And a lot of time in possession, this Brown team's losing pretty much weekly. So with those factors and Aaron Rodgers, even without DK Metcalf in this game, I still think he could find ways to put up some fantasy points. I'm not saying he's a must start, but he's definitely a guy, if you're streaming quarterbacks weekly, I would start in this one, and Shedeur Sanders is sit. Besides one big game, Sanders is taking a lot of hits. He's turning the football over. And also as well, they don't have many options in the receiving room. The only guy that's been consistent is rookie tight end Harold Fannin Jr. all season long for this Cleveland Brown team. So this week, Shedeur Sanders is a sit. New Orleans Saints at the Tennessee Titans. Tyler Shuck to start in this one. It's been a solid rookie season for Shuck. In the last month of the season, he's really emerged. And actually, he's been a fantasy option, 18 or more fantasy points in the last month for Tyler Shuck. So this week, a pretty decent matchup at the Tennessee Titans. Their defense is nothing special, obviously. And Shuck's a quarterback that's going out there. And if it's just him and Olave and Jawan Johnson making plays, it's still more than enough to be a decent fantasy option. And Cam Ward is it. This offense all season long hasn't been consistent. I know they've had a couple games where they put up some points. Obviously, is this Tennessee Titan team. But Cam Ward, it's a rookie year for him. Obviously, it didn't work out with the head coach. They fired him weeks ago. And we'll see who they get for head coach next season. But this week, even in a decent matchup versus Saints, he's a sit. Jaguars at the Indianapolis Colts. Trevor Lawrence is a start. The last couple weeks, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in pro football and fantasy football, Trevor Lawrence. So the last 2 games alone just for Lawrence, he's got 9 touchdowns in the time. So last week, tough environment he went into Denver, and he dominated that game where the Jaguars won by 2 touchdowns. So this week in a matchup at Indianapolis where we just saw Brock Purdy go out there and throw 5 touchdowns versus defense, Lawrence could be in for a big game. Once again, Phillip Rivers a fringe option. It's been decent 2 games for Phillip Rivers. For a guy to come off 5 years of retirement at 44 years old, obviously, and obviously he is a head coach. He's involved as a high school coach as Phillip Rivers, but pretty much to come off the couch and play in NFL games and look decent the first couple games he's back, he's a fringe option to me. Obviously, they're going to be chasing points. Jacksonville, one of the better offenses in the league, especially the last month of the season. And this week, Phillip Rivers, like I said, last week versus a good San Francisco unit. Early in the game, he made plays, kept his team in it. And then obviously a pick 6 at the end of the game put the game on ice in that one. But Phillip Rivers this week versus the Jaguars, if you're in a pinch in deeper leagues, he's a fringe option. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Miami Dolphins. Baker Mayfield, definitely been a down season for him, but obviously still great playmakers. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Emeka Egbuka, even though he's taken a backseat of late for this Buc team. But this week it's a slam dunk matchup at the Miami Dolphins, a defense that can't stop anyone. We saw Burrow go from a game where he didn't throw 1 touchdown to 4 last week in a big game, and I think Baker Mayfield and this Buc team know they got to win out, and hopefully the Panthers lose one of them for them to win this division. So this week I think Baker and the Bucs, after a bad loss at Carolina, bounce back and have a big game. Quinn Ewers a sit. I know this Buc team, their defense hasn't been great. Defense has been leaky as well, giving up big plays. But this week, rookie quarterback and second career start with not a lot of options in the passing game. He's a sit. New England Patriots at the New York Jets. Drake May a start each and every week. Him and Matthew Stafford, 2 favorites in my opinion for the MVP trophy this season. And Drake May, the poise he's got in the pocket, and pretty much weekly, it just seems like 275 and 2 touchdowns he's going to put on the board. So this week, in a great matchup in a bad Jet defense, he's a start. Brady Cook a sit. Brady Cook, only 3rd career start for this New York Jet team. Showed some flashes at time, but there's not much in this Jet offense for him to go out there and have a high ceiling weekly. And also this week, it's a very tough matchup versus a hard-hitting New England and well-coached defense of this Patriot team. Seattle Seahawks at the Carolina Panthers. Sam Darnold, he's been inconsistent for the most part this season. It's pretty much been the defense and the running game at times finding the end zone. Where I know Jackson Smith-Njigba, he's having a good season, but Sam Darnold, he had a couple good games early in the year, but now his numbers are definitely taking a hit. So this week in a matchup with an underrated defense, especially at home, the Panthers defense better than it is on the road. He's a sit. And Bryce Young a sit. as well. Seattle, one of the better defenses in the league. I know last week they gave up a bunch of points, but that obviously was the Los Angeles Rams, arguably the best offense in all pro football. So this week, Bryce Young with a tough Seattle defense coming in, led obviously by Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Tyreek Woolen in the secondary. He's a sit this week. New York Giants at the Vegas Raiders. Jackson Dart, a fringe option for me this week. I don't know with Jackson Dart. Last week, they just didn't want him to do much in that game. He only threw the football 13 times. And also, he didn't run much, where obviously concussion issues have been a problem in his rookie season for Jackson Dart. So Dart was playing good football under Dable until they fired him weeks ago, is this New York Giant team. And obviously, his numbers really haven't been the same. But this week in a matchup at the Raiders, even if they're taking it cautious with Dart in their quarterback, he's a fringe option. And Geno Smith is it. I know Geno had a big game last week, and I know it was a very tough matchup versus the Houston Texans, but Geno all season long has been a turnover machine. He's been taking big hits, and this Raider offense, besides Jinty and Brock Bowers, doesn't have much consistency on it week in and week out. So even in a decent matchup versus the Giants, he's a sit. Philadelphia Eagles at the Buffalo Bills. Jalen Hurts and this offense, they've been back on track over the last month of the season, making big plays. A.J. Brown, he's been peppered with targets, going out there, putting up big numbers for this Philadelphia Eagle team. And this week in a matchup at the Bills, where both teams put a lot of points on the board, regardless of the defense they're versing, needs to start. And Josh Allen to start. Last week a down game, it was for Allen, but it was a lot of drives where they got stopped within the 10, and James Cook had 2 touchdowns, and Ty Johnson had one as well, where it was the running backs doing the damage, finding the end zone in that one. But Josh Allen, we rarely see 2 bad games in a row from him. And this week versus the Philadelphia Eagles, he bounces back and he's a start. As at the 49ers, Caleb Williams, a fringe option. His fantasy numbers have been up and down this season. In terms of making plays and winning games, he's definitely done that this season for the Bears, but his fantasy numbers, like I said, one good week, one bad week. He just hasn't been consistent, especially the last month of the season. So this week, a tougher matchup at the Niners. I know Phil Rivers last week went out there, had good success the first few quarters of that ball game. Then they adjusted to Rivers, brought more pressure, more blitz packages, and that's where he broke down and had trouble. But Caleb Williams, one of the more elusive quarterbacks in the league. But this week, to me, in a tougher matchup, he's a fringe option. Brock Purdy a start. Brock Purdy looking like he's in mid-season form now. We missed a lot of ball games this year with the toe injury, is Brock Purdy. But last week went out there in Indianapolis and he was throwing that football all over the field. 5 touchdowns in that game. So we'll see if George Kittle gives it a go. He got banged up with a hamstring injury after he went over 100 yards and found the end zone in last week's game. But Purdy, like I said, he looks like he's in mid-season form right now, and he's playing great football. Start and Monday night, Los Angeles Rams at the Falcons. Matthew Stafford, him and Drake May, to me, are the 2 MVP finalists this season. Stafford's putting up huge numbers. Him and Puka Nacua have been locked in. Most likely, Devontae Adams isn't going to play in this game, but I don't think it's a big deal. I think this Ram team, after coming off a bad loss at Seattle, they're going to go into Atlanta and put up a lot of points early, and often needs to start, and Kirk Cousins to sit. The last couple of weeks, he's been mediocre in terms of putting up fantasy numbers at Kirk Cousins, but still, he's not really a quarterback you trust week in and week out, especially in a championship game. And also with a Ram defense, after blowing that lead last week, I think they're going to take it out on Cousins and this Falcon offense. That's quarterback starts in every matchup for Week 17 of the fantasy football season.